Hello there, beautiful. How are you doing today? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr, and in today's Dissidia Opera Omnia Should You Pull video, we're going to be talking about the big one. This is the most anticipated character, arguably, of the entire Shinryu era, and it's Lunafreya. So someone at Square Enix seems to really like Lunafreya, as she gets some hella tools when she comes over to Dissidia Opera Omnia sometime next week in theory. And we're going to take a dive into what she gets from this banner that comes with her full kit, including her FR and her BT, as well as the likes of Ultimecia and Yang, and seeing what they get out of this particular banner as well. And of course the story chapter that comes with them, which we're expecting to see soon after the community stream on Monday. So if you're interested in all of that stuff and more, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Before we get started, of course, don't forget to check out all of my social media links in the description box below, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord, Patreon, and Instagram, of course. Over on Twitch, I am very grateful and also very pleased to be able to say that we've met our next goal in the San Diego TwitchCon fund donation drive, and that means that we'll be having a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 subathon early in September. So a massive thank you goes out to all of you, and a special shout out of course goes to Luca Yasha for their generous sort of donations to all of this, as well as everyone else that has donated so far. I'm fairly sure I'm getting close to the point where I can certainly look at booking something, so this is really exciting and I can't wait to hopefully meet some of you guys, and I'm very hopeful and optimistic that this is going to happen. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of the stuff that we've done, and I hope that I can give you guys something back in some big ways going forward as well. Don't forget to check out as well, I have posted a video fairly recently on Ever Crisis, as that's a video that I'm looking at, and I'm looking at this game and thinking, alright, I'm interested, we might give this one a look, so do give that a look if you're interested in that as well. Over on Patreon, I do always shout out one of my patrons every time I release a video, and today that person's going to be TrimBW, who has Sophia as their title card, and is actually one of my mods as well, so a massive thank you goes out to you and to everyone that supports this channel. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to continue doing what I'm doing, so I am grateful every single day. And of course, lastly, don't forget to check out all of the other content creators and resources out there for Dissidia Opera Omnia, as there are many of them and they all deserve your love too. Right, so let's go taking a look at these banners. So before we get started on looking at Lunafreya herself, let's look at everyone else that's on the banners with her. So there are two banners that are going to be present here. The first of which is going to contain just Lunafreya's FR, but is going to contain Ultimecia's full kit, as well as Cypher and Yang LDs. And then the second banner is going to have all of Lunafreya's kit, including her BT, LD, FR, and the rest. And then we're going to see Barsh and Lion returning here. Now the characters that get just their force enhancements here are going to be Barsh and Cypher, but we're going to start by taking a look at the rework that Yang gets. But before we do, I do actually want to point out this Reddit post here by Sinewave, who is also on YouTube. This tells you literally everything you could need to know about Lunafreya. I will leave a link in the description box for this particular post. It is fantastic in explaining why she's so popular, why she's as strong as she is, why she shouldn't be compared to Charlotta, why there's so many good things in this post. Massive shout outs to you there, Sinewave, for this post, because it is fantastic. And honestly, anything I say in this video is probably going to be said better in this post, to be quite honest. But let's take a look at Yang. So Yang gets a rework here, and he gets pretty generic stuff across the board, except for one thing that really does elevate him quite significantly. So his kick plus gives you extra HP dumps, gives you brave gains between HP dump, focus gives you HP dumps, extra bravery between HP dumps, all of that good stuff. Now his LD, the reason that people like Yang before is because he was one of the first major kind of between player turn off turn damage dealers, and people like to use him a lot with Terra. But his biggest problem is that you kind of had to prevent him from getting turns, because his Oboro, or his Monk's Secrets buff, only lasted for 2 turns, so you really didn't want him to take turns, otherwise you were just going to run out of the buff really quickly. Well, now he does a larger number of HP dumps sort of across the actual LD attack itself, and he gets an additional one during the follow-up attack, so it's 2. And he has a much longer duration for the actual Monk's Secret buff, which is what gives him access to this off-turn damage attack. He actually does have a counter attack as well that has an HP dump in it, which is kind of cool. But much like Cloud of Darkness, it's one of those ones where it's like, yeah, it's nice if it goes off, but you're not really here for it. So his EX also gets a C90 here, which is just going to make it so that he gets a larger number of HP dumps, and his Wife's Encouragement buff lasts longer. Very standard stuff when it comes to kind of making him relevant for today's era. Would you use him? I would say so. I think he's actually pretty good. Like, I've used Yang plenty of times before, and I do think that having more off-turn damage dealers is always welcome, certainly in Shinryu era, where there's more turns you have to, or less turns you have to kind of push everything into, so the more off-turn damage you're dealing, the better. Are you going to use him over the likes of Kain? Probably not. Kain has a BT effect and a lot more going for him. He's not on the screen when he does his bits. And is he going to be replacing like a counter damage dealer? No, probably not. But he works very well in conjunction with them, and there's no reason why you can't use more than one at the same time. And I think that having access to him will open up some more player like team compositions that will make him really enjoyable. And then the second character on this banner is going to be Ultimecia. So Ultimecia gets a rework here, as well as her BT Plus and her C90. So Ultimecia's main thing is using her EX to give her multiple turns in a row where she can use 100% AoE damage attacks through her skill 2, but she'd always had to build up some like her Maleficium buffs in order to make it so that she had the plus versions of her skills, which was always a little bit awkward. And then her LD basically recovered skill uses and made it so that she just had a more streamlined kit all around. But the problem with her in Lunafreya era is that during those turns that she's taking, you could be using a character that only took one turn to do as much damage as she was doing. Her BT effect, however, is very interesting in that every time Ultimecia acts, she deletes the enemy's turns, much like a Mid-Italian or other characters like that. So she's definitely got some perks, and in Shinryu era, if you pair her up with the right FR, she can actually do some really serious work. With regards to the rework, again, pretty standard fare. You get more HP dumps from Protean Swords, more HP dumps from Hell's Judgment. Hell's Judgment has less than Protean Swords because it's 100% AoE, whereas Protean Swords now only has 50% splash damage. Obviously, this can be increased, so you can make it as good as, if not better. And then Shockwave Pulsar has gravity damage added into it and has 5 HP dumps, and she gives herself the buff from the beginning. Her EX boost, however, is really nice because she starts with it, which is great. The recast speed has been increased, and you start with 3 stacks of her Maleficium, so that once you've used her EX, it's not going to take much for her to go straight back into having 5, and then you could just get going with it. Again, it streamlines her kit completely. And then Apocalypse has 4 HP dumps, and it extends the number of free attacks you get to 2, which is huge for her because she would always run out of her skills because you'd be using them so frequently, and you only got 1 free skill from using her EX, and now you get 2, which is massive. And then you also, buffs granted to self will not be reduced while she has her buff up that gives her instant turns, so she kind of functions a little bit like Terra, but in a slightly sort of more controlled fashion than Terra is. The Ultimecia BT, now it still has the deletes targets next turn whenever she attacks, which is fantastic, and it now lasts for 6 turns, and you obviously get the BT Plus version of it, so you can use this twice. And also you get from the buff itself 50% brave damage, 20% HP damage, 50% brave cap, and 30% HP cap, which is realistically all you really want from Ultimecia. Would I go looking for Ultimecia now? Now, I can tell you this from my perspective. I don't have Ultimecia. I've tried to get Ultimecia LD and BT multiple times in the past and always failed. I still don't think I'm going to pull for her. And the reason for that is because Ultima ingots are premium right now, and her name isn't Lunafreya, is the sad reality of it. I think that people who want to use Ultimecia and really love her will get a lot out of her kit. If you pair her up with the right FR, so a magic-based one, or one that involves taking instant turns or anything like that, there's lots you can do to play around with Ultimecia and make her really enjoyable and fun. And But I just think that in this day and age, the real sad reality when it comes to Dissidia right now, it's not whether you can pull for something, it's whether you can maximize its potential once you've actually pulled for it. And do you have enough ingots and ultimatomes available for you to be doing Ultimecia and Lunafreya, let alone whether you need to pull for Ultimecia on top of that? And if the answer's no, and you can only pick one of them, I know which one I'm picking, and it's probably not going to be her. So now we can move on to the other banner here, which is the one that contains Lion and Lunafreya. Now Lion gets her rework here, and her rework is as simple as they come. It is literally HP dumps across the board, though not enough of them if you ask me, and she gets like her LD buff from the start of the fight, which enables her follow-ups, which has 2 HP dumps in it now instead of 1. Lion's main role is that she likes dispelling things, and she has follow-ups depending on whether she's acted after another party member rather than an enemy. And she's finally, and she ditched with her last buff, like the fact that she had to be targeted by enemies while she had her LD up, so that was a thing. I just wish she had at least one more HP dump in something, because when you look at it, she is an LD only damage dealer. She doesn't have an FR, she doesn't have a BT. When you add everything up, so Sneak Attack will have 5 HP dumps in it if you include the Bully follow-up attack. Powder Keg will only have 4, but it does have some nice beat debuffs on it, like attack and defense down, so that's something. It's not Tidus levels, but it's something. And then Pirate Pummel will have 8, which is good, but it's attached to her LD, which you're only really going to want to use if you need to refresh her buff. And her EX is also nice in that it does a AoE, like 3 HP dumps, then 2 HP dumps because it has an additional follow-up as long as she went after another party member, and then obviously Bully adds another 2 onto it. That adds up to, at maximum, 8 HP dumps from her LD, which is good, 7 from her EX, and then 4 or 5 from her regular kit. The best comparison point I can have to that is Kayn. Like, Kayn, even when he's not up in the air, has 7 HP dumps on Gungnir, and has launch capabilities which adds HP dumps onto his EX, and also delay on that, and has a BT. And, well, I mean, he has an FR, but you don't really use it. But I think if you're an LD-only damage dealer, your direct competition for a party slot is gonna be a BT-based party, like, damage dealer. Yes, she does have some extra utility, like she has Dispel, she has those debuffs from Powder Keg. But are you going to use her over somebody stronger unless you really love her and you're not just going for the favourites over meta approach? I don't think so. So now we come to the big one. So the reason I'm releasing this video early is because I feel that Lunafreya is going to take a little while to explain, but don't let that fool you. She's not as complicated as she looks. It's just that she has so many different things that she can do that it's going to take a while to go through it. And again, I will point your attention to Sinewave's post here as well. Again, we'll leave a link in the description box for that because I think it's amazing. And I really do think that something that was said in that post really struck me in that, no, you don't have to pull for Lunafreya. You don't have to. She is an incredible character. Like, she is potentially the best support character we've ever seen in this game. But that doesn't mean you have to pull for her. But just because you don't have to pull for a character, it doesn't mean they're not insanely powerful. And that really struck me, and I wanted to kind of reiterate that. So let's go into exactly what Lunafreya can do, and then the applications and what you can actually do with her. So her skill 1 is Energy Heal, which is a instant turn, party-wide AoE, HP heal, and battery that also has a buff attached to it, which is Brave regen, HP regen, and a 20% attack up. This is ridiculous, because she's capable of charging the FR gauge really quickly, much like Charlotta and other characters like her, because she has an instant turn ability that doesn't deal damage, and it's a cure of all things, so Braska, eat your heart out already. Her skill 2, which is going to be Freezing Fubuki, is going to be a AoE, a Brave HP attack with 3 HP dumps in it that inflicts Ice Resist down. So she is also an Ice Enchanter and Imperiler, so that's where a lot of this is going to come from. This is just her basic damage dealing tool, so it's not anything super crazy, but it's there and it's a decent attack. Her EX attack is Diamond Dust, so this has a good recast speed on it, which is brilliant considering that she has a way of charging that really quickly through her skill 1 if you want to. That is going to have another sort of like multiple HP dumps, full AoE 100%, and this is also going to give the Ice Enchantment buff to the party, also giving Bravery Gen again, AoE, attack, max brave, and initial bravery up, which is all really nice stuff. Like, it's all just good. Her LD. This is where stuff gets a bit crazy. So, she does have a bit of a pain-related thing where your party members are situated in relation to where Lunafreya is standing is impactful, but it's a lot simpler than it sounds. So first things first, her LD gives her 4 stacks of her special ability, which is her Trident of Duty. This will go up by 1 stack every time she acts, and as long as she has 4 stacks, she changes her bravery and her HP attack to either Swiftness Prayer or Heavy Prayer. So Swiftness Prayer grants any ally, excluding herself, 2 turns of instant turn and no turn count. So think Noctis, but with instant turn added on top of it. And you can give this to anyone. So if you're giving this to a character that has an FR that isn't instant turn, for example, it becomes so easy to just set yourself up, FR BT go. And then you're good to go. And then that's that done. Or you have Heavy Strike Prayer, which essentially gives the similar kind of buff to what General Leo had, where when dealing HP damage, you get an additional HP damage cap, or damage equal to 10% of your bravery cap. And then that's great if you want to pair her up with off-turn damage dealers, or anyone that doesn't necessarily need the Swiftness Prayer. So that's great in and of itself. We haven't actually finished talking about the LD yet. Just pointing that out here. So, now that you know what Swiftness Prayer and Heavy Strike Prayer do, you'll see quite how crazy this is. So Swiftness Prayer is given to Lunafreya and any allies to the right of her for 2 turns, and it doesn't consume any ability uses for Lunafreya, excluding like FRs and LDs, etc. But it means that you can use her skill 1 again and charge that gauge even quicker. And it also grants Heavy Strike Prayer to Lunafreya and anyone that's to the left of her for 3 turns. It's instant turn rate, so she's going to get to use that Swiftness buff straight away. So if you're gunning for the FR gauge, you're able to just go off and do that. It also recovers the use of Energy Heal and Freezing Fubuki after you've done. So not only are you getting a free skill, you're getting 1 back. So you're actually getting 2. So you can quite easily just go Energy Heal, LD, Energy Heal, Energy Heal, Energy Heal, LD, ad nauseum until you fill the FR gauge up, if that's what you want to do. And then you get some HP attacks added in after it as well, because why not? So realistically, you can actually make use of Lunafreya very well with just her LD. Obviously, the more of her kit you have, the better. But her LD is disgustingly powerful by itself. It's just phenomenal for her ability to charge the FR gauge and then just give the turns over to someone else that will use the FR itself and then make the game go. However, I will say there is going to be sort of lockout content going forward. So if that's coming about, you may want to avoid using her EX in case of enemies that resist ice damage, because when those elemental lockout kits come out, or when those elemental lockout enemies come out, they will reduce any elemental damage they don't want to 1. No questions asked. But if you don't use her EX, you don't get the ice enchant. So that might be a way to use Lunafreya even in sort of events where she's resisted. So then we have her FR. Her FR is very useful in a lot of ways. It's probably the least important part of her kit, but it's still really good. So she pairs up with Rydia. And then this one has a bit of a uniqueness to it because it provides a buff as well as the Force Time, which is party-wide water enchant that is similar to Lulu's in that it's going to be applied whether it's elemental or not. So always going to have extra like water damage. So she's a water and ice enchant and Imperiler. So then she also gives party-wide brave regen and HP regen during Force Time as well. And then the prerequisites for the Force Time commands are going to be when a character uses an ice command, when a character uses a water command, and when a character grants buffs to characters other than themselves. So You don't have to worry about 2 of those straight off the bat, because Lunafreya does it for you, because she enchants for ice and water. So those are already done before you've even had to look at anything. And then, when a turn passes when a character grants buffs to characters other than themselves, how many characters randomly just put an attack up, or a defense up, or like a speed up, or anything to the party just while they're naturally doing their thing? If you're wanting to use Lunafreya's FR, you may want to look at characters that do that in particular, and just so you're capitalizing on that FR board. But you can just have Lunafreya do it herself because of the fact that she has instant turns with everything and she grants buffs with most of what she does. So you can just have Lunafreya be your primary damage dealer if you really fancy it. It's not how I would use her, but you can absolutely do that. And then of course we have her BT. So her BT is 5 HP dumps, which in a BT is actually fantastic when you consider force time on top of all of that. And then the following BT effect is added. So that top bit I'm going to ignore for a second because I'm going to come back to it. But 50% brave damage, 20% HP damage up, 20% brave gains, 50% brave damage cap, and 20% HP damage cap. So all that good stuff. But the thing that makes it unique is that it extends all buffs granted by Lunafreya by 1 action. And this includes Swiftness Prayer and Heavy Strike Prayer, which means you get 3 additional turns with any character that don't cost anything. It's crazy quite how much Lunafreya can do. There's so many things that she can be applied to. Like, people say that she's overhyped. I disagree. Like, I mean, I'm a bit of a hipster sometimes. I can be. And I will sit there and I'm like, oh no, this character's overhyped and this character's unhyped. With Lunafreya, it's hard. It's genuinely hard to find fault with her, apart from Elemental Lockout. That is the only thing I can think of that could even feasibly be considered wrong with her, because she just does everything. Curing, strong auras, enchant Imperil on 2 different elements, heat, like the battery, FR charging, damage dealing if you really want it. Uniqueness. She is serving charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. Let me tell you that much. Like, there's just so much to it. Her calls are really good as well. Like, I hope they're realistic. No, they're not. Well, that's fine, because her call abilities, her skill 1 is her regular call ability, which is the party-wide cure with HP regen and brave regen. And then her LD call does what her LD does, which gives the caller quick and heavy strike buffs for 1 and 2 turns, respectively. Characters to the right of her get a quick, and characters to the left of her get a heavy. So it's just, if you're going into BT phase, you get all of that. It's like you get the heavy buff on the character, on your whole party if you position them correctly. There's a little bit of positioning you have to do, but it's literally a case of character to the right of me, I want to, like, actually take turns and do loads of things. Character to the left of me, I want to be able to do the most damage with the turns they do get, so that they can do loads of off-turn damage. It's just mind-boggling how much she does. Like, I have said this in my Future Pools video, and I will say it again. If there is one character that you go gunning for in this era, in my opinion, make it Lunafreya. Right, now that we've gushed about Lunafreya for Christ knows how long, let's take a look at the story chapter that's going to be coming with her, which we assume is going to be the next event. I will say this, I filmed this video quite in advance of the community stream, and there is every chance there could be a shake-up from that community stream. If there is, so be it, but at least this video is out ready for when Lunafreya does turn up, and I'm pretty sure that they're not going to stick something in the way of Lunafreya when everyone's this hyped for her already. But they might try and, like, you know, squeeze those extra gems out of us beforehand. You never know. So, this story chapter, which is Act 3, Chapter 9, Part 1, is going to be the first of 2 fights that we have with Ultimecia, and also a Quirl that accompanies her. So, Ultimecia, quite honestly, is quite simple to explain because she behaves exactly like the player version of her does. So, she has a recast attack, which is her EX, which gives her attack up and 2 free turns because it gives her a Junction Griever buff, and she also can inflict sort of a defense downs with some of her attacks, similar to what you can with our player version. And the Quirl, however, has some pretty nasty debuffs like Confuse and Paralyze, so you might want to consider someone like Ignis or Lena, or at least a call from Lena if you want to avoid those, if you're even letting the enemy take turns. Now, the chances are you're probably going to have to let Ultimecia at least take some turns, because at 79%, 49% and 19%, Ultimecia will instantly fill her recast gauge and walk to the front of the turn queue, which means that she's going to take 3 extra turns and she's going to batter you around a bit before you can carry on. You can actually use this to your advantage though, as we've seen many a time with off-turn based damage dealers, where you can use that so you can abuse your counter tanks, your Renos, or anything like that if you wanted to. So with her force time, so as her force time rises, her turn rate and her Quirl party turn rate goes up and her attack goes up. Nice and simple. When she goes into force time, her thing is her burst effect, which is the fact that she's going to delete your turns every time that she goes to attack you. So that's something you might want to consider, but again, you can use that to your advantage. Get those counter tanks out if you fancy it. If you're going for Lunafreya, give Galoof and Auron the heavy buff and see how much extra damage they can deal. All of that good stuff is also true. But yeah, so she has Force Apocalypse, which is her recast attack, as I said, and then she has Shockwave Pulsar, which does defense down, and then the rest of it is actually very simple. There's not anything super scary about it, apart from the fact that she can jump turns. And the reality of the situation is, if you've got Lunafreya, and a lot of people are going to pull for Lunafreya, it's not much of a spoiler for this video for me to tell you that people are pulling for Lunafreya, you're not going to struggle with this fight. However, I do think that I didn't say earlier, like some of the really fun interactions that Lunafreya has that I've seen like through clears of this fight, such as using Aphmau in a similar way to like Sid Reigns and Aphmau, where you can have Aphmau target Lunafreya as the character who benefits from her LD, and then have Lunafreya target Aphmau with the swiftness buff, so they're constantly just doing their thing, and then your third character is just sitting there doing their off-turny thing. And then there's lots of fun to be had with that. I also think that Lunafreya and Emperor can be really fierce as well, because you get those traps just constantly going off. Emperor with those traps is vile. And then you've also got Cloud of Darkness now. Cloud of Darkness is actually really good at this event because of their burst effect that will trigger after Ultimecia has taken their turn. She's probably gained Bravery, so then Cloud of Darkness can break her and then take their own turn and then do their own thing. There's a lot of wiggle room here. If you want to take your Camlenauts and your Tiduses, then you could absolutely do that. Let's also not forget the Lunafreya enchants for ice, so the Camlenaut doesn't have to carry Kurosame necessarily anymore. There's a lot. This character is a lot. That's all I have to say. So now, of course, we have Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to let your voice be heard and let everyone know whether you would pull on any given banner and why that might be the case. So once again, a massive thank you to all of my patrons for casting their votes and their comments, and if you'd like to join in the conversation and be a part of this section of the videos, and perhaps you'd like to consider joining up on Patreon and supporting the channel as well. Anyways, of the 100 plus people we asked, we'll go straight into the numbers. With Ultimecia's banner, 5% of people have said yes to gems, 5% of people have said yes to 100 or more tickets, 14% of people have said less than 100 tickets, 57% of people said no because they didn't want it, and 19% of people said no because they already had everything. I don't even have Ultimecia's LD, she's spited me that much, so I'm probably going to return in kind and not bother pulling up this banner at all. I mean, if there's a free pull on this banner as well as the other one and it does alright, then maybe I'll consider throwing some tickets at it. And the only other way I would consider pulling on this banner is if Lunafreya is particularly kind to me and I still do a lot with her BT and her LD and I don't have the FR yet. So that's the only way I would realistically want to pull on this particular banner. And then with Lunafreya's own banner, I'm sure this is not shocking to say, but 76% of people are saying yes to gems here, 20% of people are saying yes to tickets, 0% said less than 100 tickets, and only 4% of people said no thank you. Now, of the people that said no, unfortunately none of them left a comment, so I can't really give any reasons why, even though I do think it would be very interesting to learn why people wouldn't particularly want to pull on this banner. So, for me personally, it will be gems. It will be gems on the back of the fact that she is a new character. I am normally quite stoic when it comes to my gems, and I'll use tickets and then I'll see if I can get lucky on like an LD or an FR or anything. But because Lunafreya is a brand new character and has so many weapons to obtain, 15, 35, EX, LD, BT, FR, it's a lot for tickets to try and handle. So I think I'm willing to take the sting for like the gems here, and then if I don't get the I want as many chances to get the BT as I can. Is it as important to her kit as say Charlotta's is to her? No, because she's ridiculous with just her LD. But I do think that I would like to have her full kit. So let's go into some comments. Serac says, Lunafreya looks like an insane support unit, so I see no reason not to pull for her. I don't really care about the hype, counter-hype, over-hype, etc. I think the kit looks articulate and fun. Her animations are the best in the game, and she fills a couple of slots alone, which will give me flexibility with team compositions. On top of that, Ultimecia is getting the green immediately. She's a massive favourite, and while her kit may not be the most broken ever, I've always found it unique and satisfying to play. Someone tell the T9 bosses that revenge is coming. I really like this explanation, because I didn't really, as much as I sat there and I gushed about how many different things Lunafreya does and it makes her ridiculously powerful, it also makes her really interesting to play. And I think that's arguably more important. In fact, it's definitely more important. The fact that she does so many things means that you can play around with your team compositions, and as long as you're not locked out of ice and water damage, and in some ways, even if you are, you can still use Lunafreya. She's an insanely powerful character with so much going for her that it's hard to not recommend her wholeheartedly. Ultimecia even, I will say, she's not, but like, she is good. And the issue still remains about like limited resources in order to make green characters. But she is fun. She does have a lot going for her, and she's kind of like a bursty character in that she kind of goes EX, and I'm going to do stuff, and then I'm going to EX again, and then I'm going to do stuff. And then it's like, oh, I quite like it. I like characters who can make use of bursts of turns in fun and interesting ways, and I do believe that Ultimecia does that very well. Multiracial Lion says, I'll be using tickets for Lunafreya as I'm only going for her LD. She's not a character that needs her BT or FR in order to provide her absurdly strong utility, which is great, as I'm running lower than I'd like to on high power stones and BT plus mats. I've got Iroha and Vayne this month to worry about, who I'd much rather have FRs for, so I need to allocate those resources to who I'm definitely going to use rather than someone I most likely won't use all that much. I managed just fine without Lunafreya on JP, but would like to try her out this time around. I'm just not fussing about with the burst and the FR. I have full kits for the other characters except for Yang, who I'm not going out of my way for. Ultimecia's BT is fine, but it's not going to tempt me away from my plan to restock and supply. There's a massive gauntlet of characters I want coming up, and I plan to be prepared. I actually agree with this in a lot of ways as well. Like, I am going for her kit, but I may not necessarily green her BT straight away, or possibly even use high power stones on her FR. It's more that I want the option to have them if I so choose. There are characters that are a little bit more off the beaten path, like Yuri and Sabin, that I'm interested in coming up soon, as well as characters like Core, stuff like that are also coming around, and Vayne, of course, that I do think are very powerful as well, and I would like to get my hands on those characters too. And as I said earlier, you kind of have to pick and choose your battles when it comes to your high power stones and your BT plus materials. And while I'd like to have all of this stuff, to have it access available, the power is in her LD. It is where the majority of her strength comes from, and the ability to spam that skill 1 in order to just fill the FR gauge. It doesn't have to necessarily be hers. I would like her BT because anything that improves HP damage cap up is going to be good for me. And having access to the additional turn of the buffs I would really like. But it's really not a mandatory thing for Lunafreya. So if you're running limited on resources, perhaps consider going just for her LD. And then finally, DJ Law says, going all in with Gems here. She's just too strong of a support to pass up. Such a strong character in party, and even as a call, well worth the investment. I do believe she's been hyped up a little too much as being a must-have character. Nobody is truly a must-have, but she's still a very strong character and a great addition. I enjoy what her kit brings, adds to my playstyle, and I have a soft spot for 15, so an easy pull for me. I will say it again, and I will echo the sentiments of Sinewave from that Reddit post. A character doesn't have to be mandatory to be crazy powerful. Lunafreya is crazy powerful. Like, no character in this game, no one character in this game is so good that you have to have them or you can't finish content. The game's too easy for that. But if you want power, you will find it in Lunafreya. So now we come to the big question at last. Should you pull for Lunafreya and Ultimecia? I don't even know why I have the section of the video. You already know the answer to this question. Someone at the development team for this game really likes Lunafreya because she's bonkers. She's just insane. Just based on the sheer number of things she can do. And she does them well as well. Like, you want an FR charger? Go for it. You want a healer? Go for it. Buffs? She's got them. Enchants, imperils, she's got it. She's got... And all of this on top of the thing that actually breaks her in half, which is the prayer buffs. Like, the prayer buffs are good on practically anyone in the cast, whether you're heavy on the off-turn damage dealers, give them a heavy buff, or give them quick buffs so they can set up properly. If you need a character that's got a setup ready for their BT phase, give them a quick buff. Off you go, getting ready. The fact that she applies it to herself with her LD is what truly sets her apart when it comes to charging the FR gauge and setting up. It's really not difficult when you're getting 2 free skill uses every time you decide to use her LD to just charge the FR gauge there and then. Like, from 0. You could do it if you wanted to. And then swap her out for a friend unit. You've given the quick buff to somebody else that's got an FR and a BT. You go FR, BT, or BT plus, FR, go. And you're good to go. She doesn't actually need her FR or her BT to do any of those things either. Like, her BT is nice. Like, having the additional turn on the prayer buffs is nice. I don't like to have an incomplete kit, so I would absolutely pull for the whole thing. And HP damage cap ups on top of everything else is also sweet, but you can make use of her for a friend unit if you wanted to, just to get that LD buff going, or you can use her LD calls to do it if you want to do it for that reason. Because the chances, like, if she's in your party, if you don't particularly want to use her FR, which is good, but it's not absolutely backbreaking like something like Camernauts or anything like that. It's good, and you'll actually get used to it, absolutely get used to it if you decide to get it. But for me, it's just the complete package. It's the sum of its parts that really makes her stand out. She has so many different things that she can do that it's hard to ignore her. Like, yeah, elemental lockout content, when that becomes a thing, is going to highlight the fact that Lunafreya is an elemental character. But like I said, if you're using her to charge the FR gauge, set your buffs up and then go, you'll probably switch her out for a friend unit anyway. And if you really want to, just don't use her EX and you don't get the ice enchant. Or the FR and you don't get the water enchant. And you don't have to worry about it with the other characters. You set your buffs up, you got your BT effect up, you got your HP damage cap, just go off with that. She's as good or as useful or as prevalent to your party as you want her to be, and that in and of itself is just crazy powerful. Ultimecia, she's fine, and I think the problem with Ultimecia is the fact that she just doesn't stand out enough. Like, it isn't that there's anything wrong with her, because there isn't. She's really good. She is really good. There's lots of BT plus characters that are really good. In fact, there are very few of them that aren't very good. But if you're going to be stood next to Lunafreya, you're going to have to look really damn good to justify pulling. And if you do, or if you already have her, are there other characters that maybe you want to use your BT plus ingots on? Then you're probably going to choose those characters over Lunafreya or Ultimecia, because Lunafreya doesn't need her BT plus to be really good, and Ultimecia's is fine for those who want her. And I just think that it's a real shame right now that a lot of these materials and these weapons are harder to recommend pulling for, even if they are good, just because there aren't enough of the resources to actually do anything with them to go around once you've actually obtained them. With the LD only characters, I think Yang is a very good alternative to your Kanes and Freyas, etc. Like, more Kane than Freya, because he doesn't have the auras that Freya has. He's good. Like, he does have a lot go for him. Like, the fact that you have unbreakability through his LD buff as well is something I failed to mention, and that can be really useful for Yang as well. So that's something to consider. Lion is unfortunately just one of the more generic characters in this game. There's really nothing that makes her stand out, and I think it's really sad because she can actually be really fun to use. But hey, if you've got other damage dealers on top of her, at least she's getting a solid number of HP dumps from her, like her LD and her EX, so that's something. But really, the star of the show is Lunafreya, and I don't think it takes much for people to see why. So that is going to be all from today's video about Lunafreya, and hopefully this has given a bit of an illumination as to why Lunafreya is quite as big a deal in this game as she is, and why people are overhyping her, underhyping her, talking about her. Like, she's a talking point. No matter which way you cut it, she is a talking point. And hopefully we'll have more news about her and her actual release day once the community stream happens on Monday. So until then, I will see you then. Thank you very much for coming and watching this video. I hope it was good for you. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for any future notifications on any future videos I might be making. And that's going to be it from me. So thank you very much, everybody, and I will see you next time. Take care.